Jessica Chen stood at the security checkpoint with her hand on her head in complete disbelief as her perfectly planned honeymoon crumbled before her eyes. She wasn't allowed to board the ship, not because of anything obviously wrong, but because of a tiny napkin hanging out of her backpack's side pocket that she didn't even know was there. That innocent-looking piece of paper contained something that made her cruise booking worthless and her romantic getaway impossible. Every year, thousands of cruise passengers make seemingly innocent mistakes that result in boarding denials, legal complications, and vacation disasters that could have been easily avoided. After interviewing former cruise security officers, guest services managers, and analyzing incident reports from major cruise lines, I've uncovered the 9 mistakes that are costing passengers their entire vacations, and most of them involve things that seem completely harmless. From packing choices that trigger federal investigations to social media posts that can ban you from future cruises, these aren't obvious violations. They're innocent-looking mistakes that can destroy your cruise experience and cost you thousands in lost bookings. I'll reveal why experienced travelers are getting permanently banned from cruise lines, which seemingly harmless behaviors can result in felony charges, and the social media mistakes that are following passengers for years. Plus, I'll share the one thing that cruise security officers say is the fastest way to turn your dream vacation into a legal nightmare, and it's something most passengers do without thinking twice. Never pack items with unknown origins. Remember Jessica? That napkin hanging from her backpack contained plant material she picked up at a Hawaiian airport gift shop, something that turned her into an inadvertent international smuggler. Cruise security now uses advanced scanning equipment that can detect organic materials, pharmaceuticals, and restricted substances that passengers don't realize they're carrying. Former security chief Mark Rodriguez revealed, "We're seeing passengers denied boarding for items they received as gifts, picked up at airports, or grabbed from hotels without knowing what they actually contain." Hawaiian kukui nuts, Caribbean sand, and even European chocolates with restricted ingredients can trigger federal investigations. International passengers face particular risks when connecting through multiple countries. Items that are legal in departure countries may be prohibited in cruise territories. Duty-free purchases from certain countries can contain ingredients that violate maritime laws. Even pharmaceutical samples from foreign doctors can trigger drug trafficking protocols. Jessica's napkin contained kukui nut fragments from a Hawaiian lei she'd purchased as a souvenir. The nuts contained compounds that are prohibited on ships traveling to certain Pacific islands, triggering agricultural violation protocols that made her ineligible for boarding and potentially subject to federal fines. Unknown item violations often compound when passengers attempt to solve problems through documentation that creates even more serious legal complications. Never present altered or questionable documentation. When Jessica tried to explain her situation, she made a critical mistake that escalated her boarding denial into a potential federal investigation. She attempted to modify her story and documentation to minimize the problem. Documentation inconsistencies trigger enhanced security screening that can involve federal law enforcement agencies. Any attempt to alter stories, modify paperwork, or provide conflicting information about travel history can result in permanent cruise line bans and legal investigations. Guest services manager Linda Torres explained, "Passengers think they're being helpful by trying to explain away problems, but inconsistent statements often trigger security protocols that we can't reverse." Prescription medication documentation faces particular scrutiny. Passengers attempting to explain why medications don't match prescriptions, why they're carrying pills in unmarked containers, or why dosages don't align with medical records can face drug trafficking investigations. International travelers with medical documentation in foreign languages need certified translations. Improvised explanations don't satisfy security requirements. Jessica initially claimed the napkin was just trash, then admitted it was a souvenir, then tried to explain it was a gift. The changing story triggered enhanced security screening and involved customs officials who flagged her documentation as potentially deceptive, making her ineligible for any cruise line bookings for 24 months. Documentation problems often stem from social media activity that passengers don't realize cruise lines are actively monitoring. Never post inappropriate content on social media. Jessica's documentation problems were compounded by social media posts she'd made months earlier that cruise security discovered during their enhanced background screening. Cruise lines actively monitor passenger social media accounts for security risks, inappropriate behavior, and content that could create onboard safety concerns. Posts involving excessive drinking, drug references, aggressive behavior, or discriminatory content can result in boarding denials and permanent cruise line bans. Social media manager Sarah Davis revealed, "We screen passenger social media as part of security protocols. Content that suggests potential problems leads to enhanced scrutiny or boarding denial." Travel-related posts face particular attention. Photos from previous cruises showing policy violations, posts about bringing prohibited items, or content suggesting plans to break cruise rules can trigger pre-boarding investigations. Passengers posting about illness, medical conditions, or health issues may face additional health screening requirements. Group travel posts create additional risks. Social media content from travel companions can affect entire booking groups. One passenger's inappropriate posts can result in denied boarding for families or friend groups traveling together. Jessica's Instagram contained photos from a previous vacation showing her with items that appeared to be cannabis products, actually legal CBD items, which security flagged as potential drug-related content during their background screening, adding substance abuse concerns to her already problematic boarding situation. Social media violations often connect to behavioral patterns that passengers display during the boarding process itself. Never display aggressive or uncooperative behavior. As Jessica's boarding situation deteriorated, her frustration led to behavioral choices that transformed her vacation inconvenience into a potential lifetime cruise industry ban. Aggressive behavior during boarding triggers security protocols that can result in permanent bans from all cruise lines, not just the specific company involved. Yelling at staff, demanding to speak to managers, or becoming confrontational during security screening escalates situations into law enforcement involvement. Security coordinator James Wilson explained, "Passenger behavior during problems often determines whether situations resolve quietly or become industry-wide incidents with lasting consequences." Uncooperative behavior includes refusing security screening, declining to answer questions, or attempting to bypass procedures. Even passive resistance like sighing, eye-rolling, or expressing frustration verbally can escalate security attention. Cruise lines share behavioral incident reports across the industry. Aggressive passengers can find themselves banned from multiple cruise companies. Jessica's frustration led her to raise her voice with security officers and demand immediate resolution, behavior that was documented as aggressive passenger incident and shared with industry security databases, potentially affecting her ability to book cruises with any major cruise line for several years. Behavioral violations during boarding often reflect poor planning choices that passengers make while preparing for their cruise. Never pack prohibited items without research. Jessica's packing mistakes weren't limited to unknown organic materials. Her luggage contained several common items that she didn't realize were prohibited under current cruise regulations. Prohibited items lists change frequently and vary by cruise line, destination, and ship type. Common household items like extension cords, power strips with surge protection, and candles can trigger confiscation and security concerns. Former baggage screening supervisor Maria Santos revealed, "Passengers pack items they've brought on previous cruises without checking current prohibited lists. Rules change constantly, and previous compliance doesn't guarantee current acceptance." Electronics violations are particularly common. Devices with removable batteries, certain types of chargers, and smart luggage with integrated electronics can trigger extensive screening or confiscation. Photography equipment with large batteries or professional features may require special documentation that most passengers don't obtain. Personal care items face increasing restrictions. Certain perfumes, medications, and cosmetics can trigger security screening. Items containing alcohol, flammable materials, or restricted chemicals can result in confiscation and incident reports. Jessica's backpack contained a power strip with surge protection, a portable battery pack without proper labeling, and prescription medication in an unmarked container. Items that individually might have been resolved but collectively created a pattern of prohibited item violations that reinforce security concerns about her travel preparation. Packing violations often reflect a broader pattern of poor research that extends to destination-specific legal requirements. Never ignore destination-specific legal requirements. Jessica's problems weren't just about cruise line policies. Her packing choices and documentation violated specific legal requirements for the Caribbean destinations on her itinerary. Each cruise destination has specific legal requirements that can result in arrest, fines, or deportation if violated. Items that are legal in home countries may be completely prohibited in cruise destinations. Former port security officer Carlos Rodriguez explained, "Passengers assume that cruise lines will inform them about destination laws, but legal compliance is passenger responsibility. Violations can result in immediate removal from ships and legal prosecution." Prescription medications face particular scrutiny in international destinations. Some common medications are controlled substances in Caribbean or European countries. Passengers carrying more than personal use quantities can face drug trafficking charges. Medical documentation requirements vary dramatically between countries. Cultural and religious items can create unexpected legal problems. Religious texts, cultural artifacts, or traditional items may be restricted or prohibited in certain destinations. Even clothing with specific symbols or messages can trigger legal issues in some countries. Jessica's prescription anxiety medication was classified as a controlled substance in 2 of her cruise destinations, and her quantity exceeded personal use limits under local laws. Her lack of proper medical documentation and the medication's unmarked container created potential drug trafficking implications that could have resulted in arrest at international ports. Legal compliance issues often worsen when passengers make poor financial choices that create additional security concerns. Never make suspicious financial transactions. Jessica's boarding denial was complicated by financial transaction patterns that triggered money laundering detection systems during her enhanced security screening. Unusual financial activity before cruises can trigger security investigations that result in boarding denials or enhanced scrutiny throughout cruises. Large cash deposits, multiple payment methods for single bookings, or last-minute payment changes can suggest money laundering or fraud. Financial security analyst David Chen explained, "Payment patterns that don't match passenger profiles trigger investigation protocols. Passengers trying to be financially clever often create security red flags they don't understand. International money transfers, cryptocurrency transactions, or payments from foreign accounts can trigger additional screening. Passengers using payment methods that don't match their identification or residency status face enhanced financial verification. Group bookings with complex payment arrangements often trigger fraud detection systems. Gift card usage for cruise payments creates particular concerns. Large gift card purchases or gift cards from unusual sources can suggest money laundering activity. Passengers using multiple gift cards or gift cards purchased with cash may face additional financial verification requirements. Jessica had purchased cruise gift cards with cash to surprise her fiancé, then used multiple cards to pay for their booking along with a credit card for incidentals, a payment pattern that financial security systems flagged as potentially suspicious, adding money laundering concerns to her already problematic boarding situation. Financial complications often reflect poor communication choices that passengers make with family members and travel companions. Never coordinate suspicious group activities. Jessica's individual problems became group complications when security discovered that her travel companions had made similar mistakes and attempted to coordinate their responses to boarding questions. Group coordination during security screening triggers enhanced investigation protocols. When travel companions provide similar explanations for problems, answer questions in coordinated ways, or appear to have rehearsed responses, security assumes organized deception. Group Activities Manager Lisa Thompson explained, "When multiple passengers have similar violations or provide synchronized explanations, we treat it as organized activity that requires enhanced investigation. Family group violations can affect entire extended families. One passenger's boarding denial can trigger enhanced screening for relatives traveling on separate bookings. Passenger databases track family connections and travel patterns that can implicate family members in individual violations. Communication between group members during screening creates additional suspicions. Passengers attempting to signal each other, coordinate stories, or provide mutual alibis often escalate individual problems into group investigations that can affect multiple bookings and future cruise eligibility. Jessica's fiancé had similar packing violations and financial transaction patterns, and when security questioned them separately, their responses were too similar, suggesting coordinated deception. This pattern escalated their individual violations into a potential organized fraud investigation that affected their entire wedding party's cruise bookings. Group coordination problems culminate in the most serious mistake passengers can make, attempting to board when they know they have violations. Never attempt to board with known violations. Jessica's final mistake was the most serious. When she realized her boarding was problematic, she attempted to proceed with check-in anyway, hoping security wouldn't discover her violations. Attempting to board with known violations transforms innocent mistakes into intentional deception that can result in federal charges. Passengers who know they have prohibited items, documentation problems, or other violations, but attempt to board anyway face charges of attempted fraud, smuggling, or conspiracy. Legal expert Sarah Davis explained, "The difference between accidental violations and intentional attempts is crucial. Passengers who try to hide problems face serious legal consequences. Concealment efforts during boarding create additional charges. Attempting to hide prohibited items, providing false information, or coordinating with others to conceal violations can result in federal conspiracy charges. Even unsuccessful concealment attempts are treated as serious criminal activity. Voluntary disclosure of problems often results in simple resolution and rebooking options. Passengers who proactively report violations, cooperate with security, and accept responsibility typically face administrative solutions rather than legal consequences." Jessica knew about several of her violations, but hoped security wouldn't discover them during screening. Her attempt to conceal problems rather than voluntarily disclose them transformed her innocent mistakes into potential fraud charges, making her ineligible for cruise rebooking and potentially subject to federal prosecution for attempted smuggling and fraud. Jessica's experience demonstrates how innocent mistakes can escalate into serious legal complications when passengers make poor choices during the resolution process. The avoidance strategies include researching all items before packing to ensure nothing has unknown origins, maintaining complete honesty in all documentation and statements, keeping social media content appropriate, and avoiding posts that could suggest risky behavior, staying calm and cooperative during all security interactions, thoroughly researching current prohibited items lists before every cruise, understanding destination-specific legal requirements for all ports, avoiding suspicious financial transaction patterns that could trigger money laundering detection, preventing group coordination that could suggest organized deception, and always voluntarily disclosing any known problems rather than attempting concealment. The one thing that cruise security officers say is the fastest way to turn your dream vacation into a legal nightmare isn't about what you pack or how you behave. It's attempting to solve problems through deception rather than cooperation. Former cruise security director Michael Santos, with 20 years of experience, explained, "Every violation we see could be resolved through honest cooperation, but passengers who try to hide problems, coordinate stories, or deceive security transform administrative issues into criminal investigations." Jessica's story illustrates this perfectly. Her original violation, accidentally carrying prohibited organic material, could have been resolved with simple confiscation and rebooking, but her attempts to minimize the problem through changing stories, her aggressive behavior when frustrated, and her decision to conceal rather than disclose violations escalated a simple mistake into potential federal charges. Successful cruise boarding requires complete honesty, voluntary disclosure of any problems, and cooperative behavior during security interactions. Passengers who treat security screening as an opportunity to resolve issues rather than hide them consistently avoid the legal complications that destroy other travelers' vacations. The difference between administrative inconvenience and criminal investigation is always the passenger's choice to cooperate honestly or attempt deceptive solutions. What cruise boarding mistakes have you witnessed or experienced that could have been easily avoided? Have you seen passengers make poor choices during security screening that escalated their problems unnecessarily? Share your observations in the comments. Your experience could help other travelers avoid similar legal complications. If these avoidance strategies helped you understand how to prevent cruise boarding disasters, hit that like button and subscribe for more cruise security insights that could save your vacation. Safe sailing, and remember, honesty and cooperation during cruise boarding can solve almost any problem, while deception and concealment can turn innocent mistakes into criminal investigations.